Hey everyone, my name is Nagic. I just wanted to tell you guys what this series is. So basically, this is going to be a series where I get submissions from you, or I look on the internet for different scary stories that I talk about on here. I read them, and then I may or may not talk about them. I don't know what I'm going to do yet. But in this one, I have 3 scary stories from Mexico, and in the background, you're going to be seeing some Resident Evil 4 gameplay from Hunter, because I'm not able to record my own gameplay yet, so he was kind enough to record his own gameplay for me to use. So, yeah, I hope you guys enjoy these stories. When I was a little kid, my mom used to see me play with duende statues that our next door neighbors had. In case no one knows what duendes are, they are little tiny creatures or gnomes that appear a lot in Mexico and parts of Europe. So whenever my mom saw me, she and my dad would yell at me and forbid to never play with them again. I remember asking her why. I said they're just statues. She and my dad then told me multiple stories about gnome sightings and how dangerous and devilish they are. My dad told me a story about them. Now, this isn't my dad's story, more of his cousin's experience with the gnomes. My aunt used to live in a rancho all by herself, and ever since she moved there, she started hearing things and even seeing things. My aunt isn't a person that gets scared. She's very confronting, so she wouldn't get scared. She would just ignore things and move on, and don't think about it so much. Not until one night, when she was outside having a cigarette, and she saw the grass move, and even heard laughing. So her being the way she is, she called out whoever was there, and then she saw about 4 gnomes standing in the dark like small little black figures just staring at her. Again, her being the way she is, she started to curse at them out, and even fight them if they got close to her. Then after that, during late at night, she started seeing them all around the house. She had enough to the point where she prayed loud, and when she was praying, they all started to cry or scream as if they were in pain, and she continued until she heard nothing anymore. After that, she never had encountered with gnomes anymore. I don't know why they appear a lot in Mexico, but I like to say 90% of the people in Mexico had seen or heard of them. Back when my uncle used to live in Mexico, he and his friends would go out drinking almost every night at a local bar they would go to. One night, him and his friends were driving late at night on their way to the bar. They stumbled upon a hitchhiker standing by the side of the road, this nice, well-dressed looking man. They didn't stop to talk to them. They just kept driving and were confused since most people in Mexico didn't do that, or at least that part of Mexico where he's from didn't. Well, anywho, to fast forward the story, they all got super drunk that night, and my uncle decided to go home early since he had to get up the next day to go to work or do something. As he was heading out, he said he felt weird, like that weird feeling you get in your gut when you know something isn't right or won't go right. Well, when he was walking back home, he saw the same man he saw on the side of the road. He recognized him and said, "Hey, I saw you like 2 hours ago or more. Sorry, I'm just tired," he said to him. The guy said there wasn't any problem, and then he asked why my uncle goes to the bar. He mentions the name of the bar, but I forgot the name of the bar that my uncle told me. My uncle said, yeah, how'd you know? I forgot to mention there was about 3 or 4 bars where my uncle drank. The guy said, oh, I guess I just guessed correctly. Then my uncle started getting weird cold chills, and then the guy asked my uncle what his name was, and he said, Roberto. That isn't my uncle's name, he just lied to the man since he didn't want that man knowing what his actual name was. The man said, no, I don't think that's your name. My uncle said it was, and he said he was tired, and he was going to go home, and the guy told him there wasn't any problem. He was just trying to make conversation. My uncle asked him what he was doing late at night, especially dressing all nice like that. And my uncle warned him about him being careful, and that he has a chance of getting mugged, and that it's best for him to go home. The man then said, I will, I just need to grab something. While he reached into his pocket, his keys or pen or something, my uncle doesn't remember much about that detail, but he said that When he dropped something, my uncle went to pick it up for him as a way of him being kind, when all of a sudden he saw the man's legs turn into hooves, like goat legs. My uncle said that he never even looked up, he just turned the other way and ran, and didn't even look back. He ran and said he ran super fast, so fast he got home as if he took a portal to his house. He said that night he couldn't sleep and just kept hearing things outside his house. He said he couldn't sleep for a whole month just thinking about that man, so he decided to move back into his parents' home because that's where he felt the safest at the moment. My uncle doesn't get scared speaking of the story now, unlike he was before, but that's my uncle's story. When I was younger, I used to wait for my dad to come home. I would always open the door for him whenever he would arrive, but one night over the summer, I remember I heard a car pull into the driveway. I remember looking at the clock and thinking how odd it was for my dad to come home 2 hours early, since he would usually still be working at this time. So I make my way to the kitchen. I opened the door quietly and saw my dad get out of the car and lock the door. Keep in mind, it was late, and it was super dark, and our light porch barely worked, so the light was low. This is where it gets creepy. I was barely able to see my dad, and he looked kind of like a shadow person. It was kind of odd since my dad would usually talk to me and tell me why I'm awake. I knew then something was off. It wasn't my dad, it was somebody else. That dark shadow man just stood there all still, just standing and looking at me. I remember my heart racing so fast. He then started walking slowly, and then started sprinting at me, and I quickly shut and locked the door. I ran to the room where I stood up waiting for my dad. Later, I heard a car pulling up to the driveway. I waited to see if it was my father, and it was. I heard the door open and saw the kitchen light open, and I got out of bed, and he said, "You still awake, kid?" I said yes, and then I told him everything that happened, and he looked scared and confused, and he said, "From now on, I don't want you going out, opening the door, and waiting for me. Wait until I open the door." He wasn't mad at me, but I definitely learned my lesson. I don't know why that happened to me or whatever, but that was one spooky thing that happened to me.